Hey there! Are you a crime scene investigator, law enforcement officer, or forensic scientist looking for a Facebook community that understands you? Check out Taction USA's forensic product groups. You'll find blogs, articles, information, and community. For those of us in the investigative field, there are not many lines of support out there, but Taction USA is a company that was founded by law enforcement for law enforcement. Subscribe today to get access to exclusive content. Just look for Taction USA in Facebook groups. Welcome to Crossing the Tape, your favorite true crime podcast. We've been away for a bit.
A little bit.
We've been dealing with about one natural disaster after another where we live. And since Brendan is a first responder, he's been quite busy.
Yeah, it seems like now we're dealing with one a day, pretty much.
Yes,
thanks to weather conditions.
It's been hectic, but we are safe and we are back. So please sign the crime scene log and we will continue with another Stockholm Syndrome case.
Yes. So, as we brought you last month, a quick recap of Stockholm Syndrome. So we mentioned that it's the name given to the psychological phenomenon in which kidnapping victims begin to bond with and sympathize with their kidnappers, rather than show resentment as you would expect. The term originates from a group of bank robbery hostages in Stockholm, Sweden, who had lost faith in the police's ability to safely rescue them. They instead sided with their captor in the hopes that he would successfully negotiate for their safety and freedom in exchange for an escape route for himself. And the last case we dealt with, a young woman named Colleen was held captive for years, and she had been so tortured and brainwashed, she believed that the best thing for her to do was to stay with her captor, otherwise her life would get a whole lot worse and her family could be put in danger.
Right.
So she stayed in that scenario even though she didn't necessarily fall in love with the guy who had taken her. So this second case of Stockholm Syndrome we're covering, it takes us to Kansas City, Missouri, or Missouri, as they say, in 1933. Henry McElroy was the city manager at the time, and he had been raising his daughter Mary alone since his wife had passed away. Mary was born in 1907, and she grew up independent with no qualms about looking after herself. When her mother died in 1920, 13-year-old Mary stepped up as the woman of the house and took care of her father, while he in turn raised her to be a respectable young lady. The father and daughter grew close, relying on each other as the only close family they had. Henry McElroy was a well-connected man and had friends in high places, to include some powerful underworld figures. In his 50s, he became an ally of Tom Pendergast, the boss of the Pendergast political machine. The power of these so-called political machines during the 20s and 30s cannot be understated. Tom Pendergast used his influence to secure the city manager job for Henry, establishing him as a wealthy, powerful political figure in his own right. Regardless of how he achieved his position, or what sort of favors he had to do to keep the boss happy, Mary McElroy was a constant supporter of her father. Henry's decisions, such as ensuring major city construction contracts went to Pendergast-controlled companies, likely netted him some enemies. However, due to his connections, he didn't have anything to worry about. That is, aside from a new trend in the criminal world. You see, after the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped in 1932, many small-time crooks viewed kidnapping as their golden ticket. Making tens of thousands of dollars in ransom for one measly victim was just too easy. A group of opportunistic criminals who could care less about political status were quite interested in the cash Henry McElroy was raking in, and they knew just how to get their hands on it. And we'll tell you about that after this message from the fine folks at the National Investigative Training Academy.
If you are looking for a career change or to expand your knowledge in an already established one, look no further than the National Investigative Training Academy. The National Investigative Training Academy, or NITA, N-I-T-A, has well over 100 courses with 70 professional development ones alone. NITA is constantly adding to their course catalog, and courses are focused on private investigation and security fields. Whether you would like to become a private investigator or you need continuing education for your investigative or security career, the National Investigative Training Academy is for you. All courses offered are 100% online and do at your own pace. Once completed, you will receive a certificate in that course. Sign up today at investigativeacademy.com. Make sure when you sign up for your courses, you mention we sent you there. We encourage you to get the best investigative and security training possible today. When you sign up, mention our brand ambassador code, BA2367. That's BA2367, and you can find those courses at investigativeacademy.com. Look for links in our show notes as well.
25-year-old Mary McElroy was enjoying a bubble bath on the morning of May 27th, 1933. Lucky her. There was a knock at the front door of the McElroy residence, which was answered by their private chef. Two supposed delivery men talked their way into the home before drawing guns and donning masks. They made their way upstairs and ordered Mary to exit the bath and get dressed. These intruders allowed her the privacy to dry off and dress herself in a fashionable pink frock, pantyhose, and tasteful white shoes.
Okay. It doesn't seem like that would be what you know. Well, wait a minute. Does my outfit go?
Well, it's May, so she's seasonably dressed.
Yes.
In the proper colors for the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably a little warm. You don't want to go too heavy. She didn't have time to grab a coat.
True.
She was led out of the house at gunpoint and out to their waiting getaway vehicle and two accomplices. The masked men were Walter McGee, the leader of this outfit. Clarence Stevens was his accomplice in the house. In the car was George McGee, Walter's brother, and Clarence Click. So, the McGee brothers and the pair of Clarences drove Mary to Click's farmhouse in Shawnee, Missouri. Once there, she was informed of her plight, and if she was to return home, her father would have to fork over $60,000.
Were you able to find out how much that is in the 30s?
You know what? We can do those calculations in a minute. We'll bring you that information shortly. But Mary laughed and told the kidnappers she's worth more than that. But $60,000 remained the number, at least for the moment. Mr. McElroy quickly noticed his daughter's disappearance and had his worst fears confirmed when he received a letter which told him not to contact police and to await a phone call. Henry wasn't the type to sit and wait, so he contacted Tom Pendergast to see what he knew about the kidnapping. Pendergast confirmed that he had no part in the crime, and together he and McElroy reached out to John Lesia, a high-ranking man in Kansas City's organized crime world. Lesia was friendly with the Pendergast machine and quickly put the feelers out to figure out which wise guy thought it was a good idea to kidnap a connected man's daughter.
Right. I know, it doesn't seem very smart.
Yeah. I know he's got the money, but he knows people.
Oh, and by the way, $60,000 back then is about $1.5 million now.
All right, so maybe she was a little cocky.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So surprisingly, none of the local outfits had any involvement, and this led Lesia to conclude that whoever made this move was small potatoes. When the phone call finally came, Henry McElroy was instructed to gather up $60,000 cash and make a handoff at a secluded spot along the Kaw River in Kansas. At Lesia's recommendation, McElroy told the caller he could only get them $30,000. Surprised they were lowballed on the price of Mary's life, the kidnappers hung up the phone. A few minutes later, they called again to accept the discounted rate. So they're negotiating.
Seems a bit of a goof, doesn't it? Like
negotiating half off.
I realize this is a serious situation, but at the same time, it kind of sounds
bumbling idiots.
Yeah.
He said he's only going to give us $30,000, and they probably looked at her and went, "Well, who's going to pay more?"
Right.
So if the dad's only going to give up 30, then I guess we got to take it. I don't know about playing hardball with your daughter's life, though, too.
No.
This Lazia guy's pretty confident.
I was going to say, he's pretty confident in his abilities to...
Either I would know about it, or these guys are clowns.
Right.
And I ain't heard about this kidnapping, so they're clowns.
Right.
After the cash was handed over to two of the masked kidnappers, Mary turned up at a nearby country club, blindfolded and holding a pair of roses. With Mary safe and sound after 34 hours of captivity, Henry declared at a press conference that the kidnappers would pay for what they did. Mary made the interesting choice of pinning the roses to her coat when she spoke to reporters. She said that despite the ordeal, she was treated very well and with great respect. This wasn't the sort of headline the papers were expecting to run. Regardless, within a few days, Walter McGee was stopped in Amarillo, Texas, back at his normal job as a truck driver. When he was stopped, he had in his possession $9,000 worth of bills with serial numbers matching the ransom money. That classic...
The classic with the serial numbers. We've discussed other cases where that was what, sealed the deal.
Yeah, well, cash is untraceable. Yeah, unless you're holding all of it with matching serial numbers.
I know. Cash is traceable.
Yeah. Once in custody, Walter broke down and confessed everything. So again, not very good criminals here. He, his brother, and two friends cooked up the scheme over a few drinks. Excellent. Perfect time to think up a criminal plot. They chatted about the recent headlines in which kidnappers made off with plenty of money, but were soon caught. The four tipsy gentlemen decided if they could skip the getting caught part, they might really be onto something. Just like the criminals that inspired them, the McGees and Click were locked up before they could spend all the ransom money. Clarence Stevens was on the lam and was never tried for the kidnapping. The investigation into the men led to about 16 out of the $30,000 being recovered. A little more than half, but only a quarter of what they were originally asking for was missing. Mary McElroy was sympathetic towards her kidnappers throughout the trials. She was, of course, the key witness and explained that they were merely businessmen trying to make a buck.
Wow.
Yes. She also insisted she was never forced to do anything inappropriate. She noted they ordered her to remove her clothing so they could make sure she didn't have any evidence from the kidnapping hidden on her person prior to release. She said, no, and they didn't push the issue. All right. She sounds like she was a strong woman.
She could have gotten anything she wanted.
I'm not doing any of that. Bring me a sandwich. All right, well, I'll just sit here. I'll bring you a sandwich. These guys had no control over the situation.
No, not at all.
They already got ripped off. She's not following instructions. And they didn't seem to really care. All three men were convicted, and George McGee and Clarence Click received lengthy prison terms. Walter McGee, however, would make history as the first man in the U.S. to receive the death penalty for kidnapping.
Interesting.
Mary suffered a nervous breakdown over Walter's sentence. She disappeared from home and wandered for a day, racked with guilt, stating that she just wasn't sure what she was doing anymore. Mary felt that what the four men did to her wasn't as serious as it had been made out, and if Walter was killed for it, then she played a part in his murder. Mary McElroy went as far as to write to the governor of Missouri to request a stay of execution. She insisted that punishing McGee this way would only further victimize her. The governor commuted the death sentence to life in prison. Still, Mary never recovered from the ordeal, and the newspapers made her out to be an idiot for being so kind towards her captors. So, the theory is that she wanted to downplay a lot of this because of how the whole thing made her father look.
Yeah.
That obviously these men went after him because he's making all this crooked money.
Her father is a criminal.
Right. He must be dirty.
Connected
That's why.
Criminal.
Right. So that was her insistence that no, they're just they just thought of a way to make a buck and it didn't work out for them. They don't need to go to prison. And she couldn't stand that McGee, who gave her the roses and was pretty nice to her, all things considered, was going to be killed.
Yeah.
She tried to downplay how much it affected her
right.
for her father's sake, and it really did a number on her mind.
Yeah, that's too bad.
And, all the while people are saying, look at this idiot. She's kidnapped.
That's the other thing.
And then she's being nice to the guys.
It's sad that, she was the victim.
Right.
And the victim because of her father. And the newspapers spun it around with, well, she's the fool.
Obviously she's just a moron.
Yeah.
After her father passed away in 1939, Mary became a recluse. And soon after, she was simply unable to carry on any further. On January 21st, 1940, Mary McElroy was found dead in her bedroom from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. She left a note which read, "My 4 kidnappers are probably the 4 people on Earth who don't consider me an utter fool.
Oh.
You have your death penalty now, so please give them a chance."
Oh, dear. That's sad.
Yeah, it's a terrible... that she was the victim in the whole thing.
Right.
And then she's mocked and ridiculed. The guys that kidnapped her, all things considered, could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
They could have abused her, done whatever they wanted, killed her.
Yeah.
It was 34 hours, which, any length of time is too
terrible,
much for that sort of thing. But
it wasn't like weeks.
Right, held for weeks or months or years. It was a day and a half. And then it was the fallout of that made her... that she suffered more from being done with the ordeal than she did
the aftermath of it. Well, it just shows people can be cruel, and they don't understand the whole situation.
Right. Yeah, she's worried about her dad because that's the only person she has left.
Right.
And she doesn't want to make him look worse in the media, so she downplays it. Then she gets ridiculed. Then her dad dies, so she's alone. Mm-hmm. She visited the kidnappers in prison a few times.
I remember you telling me about that earlier.
She would visit them. She was very friendly with their family members who were at the trials. If it was up to her, this whole thing would have gone way different.
Yeah.
She probably would have written them a check of, for some amount if they had just asked, rather than deal with all this. Mm-hmm. But in the end, she just couldn't carry on. And like she said, well, there, now you have your death sentence.
It's too bad.
Mm-hmm. It's a very unfortunate way for her to go.
Yeah.
And like she said, it's only going to serve to victimize me further.
Yeah. Really. Well, yeah. And if it got out in the media too, which it probably did, given her father's status,
right, that
she was visiting them and everything, then that's going to be blown out of proportion.
Right.
And
that this fool is gaga over all these guys that did these terrible things. What kind of man is her father that he would let this go on?
Right.
And her efforts ended up making the whole thing worse.
Yeah.
But that is the unfortunate story and the effect of Stockholm Syndrome, really, in a totally different way than the last episode.
Right.
But as we wrap up, I want to give you a little programming note. If everything doesn't get terrible again, you should be hearing this episode on July 13th. In 2 weeks' time, we'll have a mini episode for you. We promised you some Jack the Ripper. Mm-hmm. It's coming.
It is.
So in a
it's
couple
all
weeks,
written.
Yes. So in a couple weeks, you'll get the first Jack the Ripper mini episode. And then we'll have 2 main episodes for you middle of next month and more Jack the Ripper after that. So, barring any other crap.
Yeah. Fingers crossed that we don't encounter anything else.
Yes, we should be back on our normal schedule starting with this next mini episode. So, do sign the crime scene log once again and come back and join us for those.
Stay safe.
And so long.